Revelation 6 is a tough set of allegories to crack. The problem with this chapter is that the author takes 3 allegories and blends them into one story. The first allegory I'll allude to is the King Era allegory. Notice the allegory is a time reference. It doesn't necessarily speak of the kings as living people. Rather, it says what they're known for. The second allegory is so much fun that I'm not going to tell you what it is quite yet. And the third allegory is the 4 horsemen, or more specifically, the 4 horses. At first, the crack will only give us a partial picture. However, once I get all 3 cracked, we'll get to one single event that the author is talking about. First, I'm going to have to simplify the picture by breaking it down. For example, I looked and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Julius Caesar could definitely be described as a conqueror, and he was given a crown. Julius Caesar had to be elected dictator by the Senate several times. Unfortunately, the bow makes no sense with Julius Caesar. The bow ends up referencing another allegory, and since we're here, let's go ahead and pull the horse out too, because that is a part of a third allegory. Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. The reign of Augustus, aka Octavian, was filled with civil conflict. There were 2 major civil wars and a load of minor civil conflicts during the reign of Augustus. Augustus ushered in a period of relative peace, but he certainly had the power to take it away. Extracting the sword and the horse, we're left with the reign of Augustus. When the Lamb opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. This sounds like an economic reference. Tiberius was the 3rd emperor. Tiberius is mostly known for consolidating power and for making the Roman state extremely wealthy. In this era, Rome was the dominant force in all things economic. Extracting the horsemen and the scales, we have the reign of Tiberius. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over 1/4 of the earth to kill by the sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. Caligula, the 4th emperor of Rome, was highly controversial and short-lived. Caligula ran through the wealth built up by Tiberius, and he quickly bankrupted the state. After he bankrupted the state, he followed this up by killing a bunch of people and taking their wealth. Also, multiple historians record a famine around 39 CE due to Caligula's spending. And anytime you have famine, you probably have plague due to malnutrition. These 2 typically go hand in hand in ancient times. Extracting Hades and the horse, we have the reign of Caligula. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Then each of them were given a white robe, and they were told to wait a little longer until the full number of their fellow servants and their brothers and sisters were killed just as they had been. Notice in this allegory there is no horseman. At first, I thought the lack of a horseman was a reference to the fact that Claudius probably had cerebral palsy and likely couldn't ride a horse. However, there are only 4 horsemen for a reason, and I'll mention that later. Also of note, the only thing of importance in this seal seems to be complaints that nothing is happening, and this would concern me if we were not talking about the reign of Claudius. Claudius was an excellent emperor, perhaps the best emperor Rome would ever have. The empire was stabilized and strengthened. He was an extremely intelligent and well-educated emperor. He loved writing, and most historians think very highly of Claudius. So to the complaining souls who want destruction right now, they just have to wait. The apocalypse will not come at the hands of someone so good as Claudius. The only other object mentioned in this allegory is an altar, and I'm going to extract that. I watched as he opened the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat's hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to earth, as figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by a strong wind. The heavens receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty, and everyone else, both slave and free, hid in caves and among the rocks of the mountains. They called to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can withstand it?" As far as the era of Nero, this is a reference to the Great Fire of Rome. Sun turning black and the sky disappearing are probably allusions to smoke. The stars falling are probably allusions to burning cinders and debris. They couldn't actually see the stars. The Great Fire burned for days and could probably be described as a firestorm. And of course, everyone ran from the city. It wouldn't have been a pleasant place to be. The other allegory in this seal is the sun and the moon, so I'll extract those. Now, at this point, I think I have a fairly reasonable case for the king era allegory. It's a bit on the vague side, and I don't know what to do with it yet, but the author does seem to be describing events and characters of the reign of the first 6 kings. The reason for this will become much clearer after I crack the last 2 allegories. Also of note, this is a time reference. This is important to keep in mind later. In the next video, I'll crack the other 2 allegories, put it back together with this allegory, and we'll get a very cool picture of Revelation 6.